Welcome to Compass Consulting Ministries, a ministry designed to help pastors and churches as they look to move forward for the kingdom of God and for the glory of Jesus. Today, I want to address a subject that is probably a commandment that is the most disobeyed by ministry staff, and that's the idea of Sabbath. If you're in ministry, you realize that all too often you're on call 24/7. The times we've been called away late in the evening to go help people in dire need or families that are struggling or counseling that needs to be done imposes a lot of sacrifice on our families and on our lives and on our own spiritual and mental health. And we do so out of a sense of duty towards those that we have been appointed to shepherd, to care for. And as a result, the burnout rate in ministry is as high as probably any other profession. Frankly, it's one of the things that really causes problems in the personal and relational life of pastors and ministry staff. And we're in violation of the fourth commandment to have a Sabbath. And we recognize that there's a large theology around the idea of Sabbath, around the concept of taking rest. And for us, the days that our church services occur are not a day of rest. They're a day of preparation and of performance in which we are called to perform the duties and take on the responsibilities that God has called us to. So where do we find rest? Where do we find refreshment? Well, Exodus 20 says that you shall remember the Sabbath, that seventh day, by keeping it holy. And of course, in Romans 14, we're told that that has changed in the New Testament church, where we are now recognizing that one man considers one day more special than others. Others consider every day alike. And I think the larger point is that God designed us for regular maintenance. Just like a car needs to have oil changed, or they have maintenance schedules for brakes or transmissions or radiator fluids, those are important to any mechanical thing, and our bodies are large mechanical, wonderfully designed organisms that God has put together. And He has said in His Word that we need to have rest. We need to have that time away. So, are you doing that? Are you considering one day sacred? Or are you considering certain times sacred? Are you willing to consider the need to maintain your family and your marriage sacred? Because it's a sacred call and a sacred duty. I love the Thomas book, Sacred Marriage. He did a fantastic job about pointing out that marriage needs to be maintained, and we need to do our part. And that if our ministry to our spouses and our families are not being effective, neither will our ministry in the church. We could fake it. God may use it, but is really in the long run hurting us and hurting those we get the opportunity to minister with. So the first point I want to make is that your time away, your Sabbath, needs to be a priority. What about in our modern culture, the idea of vacation? What is vacation? What's it for? Well, it's a designed length of time to help us refresh, power down, be focused on regaining a sense of health and a sense of refreshment in our own spirits. I think that's equally important, and I actually believe it's biblical, because if we look in the Old Testament, the festivals were times to worship God, but they were also times away from people's daily lives. There were 3 festivals that God said everyone should appear before me 3 times a year. And when you look at those festivals, they were designed to be a week or weeks long. The Passover combined with Pentecost was there so that people would spend time in relationship and family. They'd be camping out. It was basically a large camp out where you worshiped it. Think of it as like our church retreats, where you get away from the hustle and bustle. You have a time to power down and be with each other. So I think you designed that time frame in around the springtime for Pentecost and Passover. But then there's also the Feast of Tabernacles, where they hung out in tents for a couple of weeks. And that was to commemorate the time in the desert, but it was also to get them back into community, away from the daily grind. That one occurred in autumn after the harvest. I think we can take that principle's legitimate application to say we should have times away where we are powered down, where we are relaxing with family, where we're worshiping God, but in a way that is not business or ministry oriented, one that is designed to refresh us and our families. I think that the idea of vacation is important. And I don't believe, frankly, that churches get the idea of vacation and days off the right way. They tend to do it in the business sense rather than in the biblical sense. And what I mean by that is that church leadership, in my opinion, should be caring for their ministry staff. Are they ensuring that they're taking time off? Do they make accommodation for the pastor or the staff to have days off where they're with family or they're with spouses or both? Are they willing to fill in on that or to provide other resources, or simply to say, hey, don't call the pastor on his day off. He needs that time if he's going to continue to be our pastor for a while and be significant and effective in his ministry. Don't take vacations where you are available. Too many pastors really, in fact, are just getting away with their families, but they're still on their phone, they're still on their computer, they're still very much involved in day-to-day ministry, and they're really not getting the refreshing time that God wants us to get to restore and be prepared to move forward. If it all sounds like I've got some energy around this, it's because I've seen too many ministry people fail for lack of taking a proper Sabbath and taking those times away. I believe it is the breaking of God's commands and designs that were there for us. Jesus pointed out that Sabbath was made for the man, not man for the Sabbath. Sabbath isn't where we are a slave to that time off, but rather we are refreshed. It was designed and made so that we would power down and relax. And all too often, ministry folk have got that backwards. They simply see it as a time where they can get more done and get away, maybe be out of the office. Speaking of that, just on a side note, for those of you who are busy preparing messages and being involved in ministry that involves reflection time, I highly encourage those be away from the office, whether it's just literally anywhere where people can't get a hold of you. Turn off the phone. You are not the source of life for everybody. No one's going to die because you took some time away so you could center on God, you could reflect on the things of God, you could let the Spirit speak to you as he often does in small, still ways where he is uninterrupted, and we can get our flesh and our responsibilities out of the way. I really want to encourage you to have that time away. I remember learning that from some older pastors that I had the privilege of serving under, where they were gone for an entire day. That was their major study time. They would take other parts of their week and study in their office, but when you're in your office, there's going to be interruption. There's no way around it. Get away from the office, get away from the church grounds, and get time where people cannot reach you. And if need be, those things will wait. God's in control. You're not. Let him work in you so that you can be effective in working for him. One more thing about time away, and that's the idea of sabbatical. And different churches take different stances on that. Is it something that's granted because as a reward for the pastor? Is it something that allows him to do what college professors do, a year of sabbaticals? They go off and research and write. Well, there's no standard. There's no one way of doing it. And if you want to have sabbatical, arrange it with your leadership. Is it going to be a period after 7 years where you take 6 months off? Is it going to be something where you have 2 to 4 weeks every year to move away from the church body and do your writing, your reading, your reflection, your planning for the year in an uninterrupted way? Work with your leadership to make sure that happens so that the church continues smoothly, but they become used to that rhythm as well. Now, church leaders, one last word of warning from me, and I alluded to it earlier and didn't really get to it. And that's the idea that unlike businesses, I believe ministries are not conferring a benefit when it comes to days off and when it comes to vacation time and sabbatical time. I believe that what they are doing is ministering to their ministers. It's not something that they earn. In other words, when I was in ministry and I was talking with the leadership of our church, they would say, well, after he served a year, then he can have some time off. And I said, so what you've done is you're going to work him like a slave for a year. You're going to tire him out at the end of that year. He's just going to be worn out. I believe that it's something we confer on our staff so that they are prepared throughout the year to have short breaks of a week or two where they can then power down and come back refreshed and energized. I don't know what anyone else's church is like, but we believe that the benefit of time away is the same benefit that we have in our mechanical things. The more we regularly service them, the better they are, the more effective they are, the longer they last. So don't view vacation, don't view days off as something that they've earned, and if you don't feel like they're doing a good job, they shouldn't have that time off. I heartily disagree. Regularly offer rest and refreshment to your ministry staff, whether you're a lead pastor or whether you're a leader in the church. They all need it. It's a command of God. It's something that's important. God didn't say to his people, work a whole year and then have some time off. He had those times set up every year for everybody that in the nation so that they might have time to relax, refresh, and be prepared to be restored. I hope that this gives you food for thought. I hope that you will find something that works for you, your church, and the rhythm of your own personal life. God bless you.